Crowie here, Sparky Coach podcast. Tell you what, I've got my lemon in water here. What a time to be alive. Shout out to my friend Elise for putting me onto that. I was drinking lots of tea. She's like, chuck some lemon in that water, boil it up. I was like, this is fantastic. What an amazing time. All right, fitSetting in the club. Lessons learned in business from fitSetting, 50 Cent, if you will. Part 4. Numeral 4, right? So, been hit with a few shells, but I don't walk with a limp. Now, just finish that in 50 Cent style. Been hit with a few shells, but I don't walk with a limp. Now, 50 allegedly got hit with some kind of shells, not a seashell. There was no selling seashells by the seashore. This was an actual bullet shell, right? Got hit somewhere on him. Someone would be able to fill that in for me, some of the die-hard 50 Cent fans. But he is not walking with a limp. And it got me thinking, what kind of shells have been thrown at you in business? Maybe let's have a look at what are some of the hardest times you've found in business. I think for the 3 that come to mind for me are doing a whole year or working really hard and not seeing the financial result. That's a shell that can get thrown at you pretty hard. You know what I'm talking about there? Another shell might be the top 3 for me, like, firstly, working really hard with no financial gain or minimal financial gain or not as much financial gain as you thought or there should have been. Huge. Specifically when you reference like 1 year to that bad misquote or something that happened or that staff member or that client that you worked for that you were really busy and you stayed really busy and stayed really active and it looked glamorous, but it wasn't. Like that, there's not many things worse than that, I don't think. The other was when having to let people go. That was so hard. Like sitting with someone and telling them there's no more spot. Doesn't matter if it was. Doesn't matter if they were no good. It doesn't matter what the circumstances. There was no joy or fun in telling someone they're no longer part of the team. That was some dark times, I reckon. Like I said, even if they weren't a great fit, it's not like you sit there going, you're not a great fit. You're out. Get out. Like Donald Trump, you're fired, right? That was just sucked. It was such a hard time. And I often say people do it too late. And, there's a massive believer, like on our Beastimator, you've got to write down the ability of a staff member. So maybe they're a weapon, maybe they're very good, maybe they're average, maybe they're not so good, maybe they're an absolute train wreck. I don't know, but it's interesting sitting with someone this morning and he labelled his apprentice average and. Do you want to know who it was? No, I need a first name and last name basis. No, I'm not going to tell anyone who it was. Lisa S. Oh, no, L. Simpson, right? Full Simpsons reference. I'm not going to name and shame anyone because it's not about that, but it was about I was like, this guy's a second year, finishing in 27, right? So another 3 years to go or whatever. And he's like, yeah. And I said, so this is really dangerous territory because you are going to be left with an average tradie more than likely at this point. And most of us were in vans by 2 or 3 years in and, maybe you were in a van after a year because you were God's gift or the trade God's gift to the electrical industry. But, a lot of us were quite capable and a lot of us have quite capable staff. And to see someone as a really average apprentice, you've got to work out, you want to be able to retain that. You want to be able to create an apprentice naturally, organically, right? That's what you want. You want someone to go through their apprenticeship. And if you're still working on the tools, there's no better time than to train someone because they're learning your ways, your skills, your communication, all that kind of stuff, right? But if you in 4 years' time produce a potato rather than a tradie, or it might as well be a potato, all of a sudden now you've missed your organic opportunity to create someone, and you're going to need someone at that point because tradies aren't around every corner, and you're going to be lumped with a potato, and you're going to be like, what do I do with this potato? Do I keep it? And only certain companies can handle average tradies. I'm not saying there's no use for them. Solar comes to mind. There's usually 2 tradies and an apprentice. You can handle an average tradie might be good under supervision. Ducted aircon, kind of similar, or large commercial stuff. Not everyone can be a weapon, but can your business handle an average tradie? And if it can't, you might want to confront that average apprentice and either give them the opportunity or the option to be like, I need you to move north here, or give them the ultimatum, whatcha? I'm Bon Jovi, baby. It's my life and it's now or never. I ain't going to live forever. I just want to live when I'm alive. No, it's my business, and you know, you've got to take the reins, and you've got to make sure that your team remains good, because that average person is going to have to go out, no doubt, to a call out at some point, to your best client's house at some point. The last thing you want to look at is the schedule where you're like, oh, I can't send that person there, or I better not send that person or that client because they've got an expectation of what that money buys them, and this certainly isn't that. So you've got to really be careful, especially trade sense. Like, you know, what are you producing, and are you taking note of it, right? And let's face it, a lemon tree doesn't produce apples, and an apple tree doesn't produce lemons. So if you've given someone the opportunity to change their root system and to change their ways and to repent from their old ways and come back, and they're still producing lemons for you, then maybe it might be a polite discussion to sit down, have a beer, and be like, I don't think you're such a good fit here. Interesting times, but that was a really hard time. So financially not seeing it was huge. Staff members letting them go was huge, and having no work was so huge. Like that was one of the hardest times, I reckon. Like when you're looking at the schedule for next week and it's blank, and when you're looking at the schedule for tomorrow and it's blank, when you're looking at the schedule for this afternoon and it's blank, like what's going to happen when you've got that desperate need to find work? All your energy is going to go into finding work because it's critical. It's genuinely critical, right? So we've got a big checklist of like in our Finding Work Bible or Finding Work Playbook of the things and items you can do when work slows down. But sometimes you can get all the cards and play all your cards and be like, I still got nothing, and it's an awful feeling to be in. And usually you can pin it back to someone not doing the daily non-negotiables of just consistently finding or replacing those clients you lost, or like, no, it's just not finding work. Like you've got to do one thing a day pretty much, unless you're super established, you've been established for 10, 15, 20 years plus. It's a generational business passed down from my father to his father, just the way I learned from my father. Oh man, that's funny. Eastbound and Down, Will Ferrell, that's funny, go watch that. Just the way my daddy learned from his daddy. Let him watch. Anyway, man, now I've lost my train of thought. But that was really tough, finding work, because all your energy is going to go into that. And you're going to sort of neglect or put on the back burner the actual non-negotiables, and they're going to build up. So you're going to be like double behind. All your energy is in finding work, but realistically, you needed to do the non-negotiables, like whether it was invoicing. Quoting will become really important to you, because that's actually critical for landing that job for this afternoon, tomorrow, next week, whatever. So, you know, you've got to take your opportunities. So you've got to basically look at all your ways of generating leads and finding work, and you've got to nail that, because you really want to be looking at the work and not looking for the work. If you're looking for the work, ask yourself the question, what did I do 3 to 6 months ago to put myself in this position? And you want the future you to thank you. You want the future you to thank you. You want yourself in 6 months' time to be like, hey, Crowie, thank you so much for finding that work back in August, because that really helped my February, right? So that's what you want to be doing. So, but you know, you've been hit with some shells. Maybe you got hit with a big BAS bill, a big tax bill that was unexpected. Tax bill should never be completely unexpected, because it's essentially a percentage of what you've earned. So I'm a big believer that you've got to be forecasting this stuff. If you've been shocked, I'd really question that. Like, I'm not saying you've never been shocked. I've been shocked, but like, you've got to educate yourself, and you've got to work out that, you know, what you're taking in drawings. There's a tax element on that, and this is why I think, to a certain extent, you should treat yourself like an employee. Pay yourself a wage, chip away at that PAYG through the portal, so the income activity statements and the BAS statements. Like, be chipping away at the PAYG, be on top of that, be putting aside percentages of what invoices come in, because the last thing you want to get to is get stuck with a tax bill and be like, where did this come from? And it's essentially, you know where it came from. It's like, that's the money you earned that year, and this is the tax as per exactly the ATO's document on how much tax you'll pay this year and how much business tax. So there's really clever ways to you know, I'm a massive believer, like, you know, you've got a couple of different setups. I wouldn't dabble in the sole trader setup. It's just like, anytime you're a sole trader, you've got a personal liability So whatever asset you own is up for grabs, basically. So you've got like a tax liability. You hit a ceiling and you can't really put it anywhere else, but it goes straight to you. And you've got a personal liability. In other words, like if something goes wrong, if the crap hits the fan, if the poo hits the lawnmower blades, it's going to splatter all over your shins and potentially get some in your eye. So in other words, if you've got an asset like a house or investment property and something goes awry, then it's up for grabs. It's potentially you get sued and you could lose that, where there's no layer of protection. A trust is a great way but a trust has to distribute. So you specifically see people like nominating beneficiaries in a trust. Maybe it's like yourself, your partner, and a religious organisation, or your parents and bits and pieces like that. So you nominate them and you can distribute to them, but a trust has to distribute. So at the end of every single year, if the trust makes $200,000, $300,000, $400,000, $1 million, $2 million, that's irrelevant. The money has to go somewhere. Where a company can park that money in it, and it can pay, not exactly up to date on the tax rate for a company, but maybe it's 25, 26, 27%, something along those lines. And you can park it in that and pay that much tax, and you can really limit your liability, right? So it's super interesting to work out the structures, but speak to your accountant, work out the best structure for you, and then walk forward from there. But sometimes people try and save the money, or an extra $2,000 a year, or $1,500 to set up the entity, but that $2,000 and $1,500 might save you $10,000. So it's really like you shouldn't be considering. Sometimes it's not about. Sometimes in the spending, you got to consider what that's going to make you. So a tool is a great example. If you've ever seen someone chasing with like a 4.5-inch grinder, it's like, what are you doing? They're dusting everywhere up, and this is so unproductive. This is such a disaster. If you get a chaser, you can probably rent that out and just bang, bang, you're done. Anything you buy, make sure it's a Zito. I wish we get sponsored by a Zito. One day I'm going to be like, a Zito, give me the stuff, and all my garage will be decked out with a Zito gear, and I might even wear a Zito shirt and a hat. One of those beer drinking hats with 2 straws in it. That'd be fantastic. Shout out to Zito. I'm a massive fan of their hammer drills. Just trash that thing. Why spend money on a trash drill? That's my 2 cents. Anyway, what have you been hit with in business? Maybe you've been hit with a year that wasn't quite what you thought. Maybe you've been hit with a staff member that wasn't quite what you thought. Maybe you've been hit with a client that wasn't quite what you thought. Maybe you've been hit with like, hey, I need you to compete with this guy. I need you to get this price down. Hey, what do you think you're doing charging me this? Hey, you can't do that. You can't do this. Maybe you've been hit with situations and things and items across clients, staff members, the ATO, across all these different realms have all come at you. And now you're starting to walk with a limp. You know what 50 Cent says? He says, been hit with a few shells, but I don't walk with a limp. You got to Chumbawamba this thing you know Chumbawamba? I get knocked down, but I get up again. You're never going to keep me down. I get knocked down, but I get up again. You got to Chumbawamba this thing into submission, right? You've got to be like, the things that have hit me are the things I needed to learn. The things I need to learn, the things I need to adopt, the things I can adopt now are what's going to make me profitable and successful into the future. So instead of limping around, be like, oh, that person cost me, oh, that supplement cost me, oh, I can't believe that. Oh, what are you limping with that has actually been an education piece that you needed to learn or relearn? So maybe, oh, that client sucks. No, you might just misquoted the job. You didn't have to accept that job. No one bent your arm around your back and been like, you need to do this job. You chose to do that job and you knew. So it's like, what are you limping with at the moment that you might need to let go of, that you might have to throw away, that you might need to just be like, you know what? I think some of my darkest times were business-wise, where, like I said, not making money on things. And then I was like, okay, I'm going to make money on stuff. Like I'm going to use this to my benefit. I'm going to use that as a learning tool. I'm a big believer that the jobs that you measure, you got to measure your worst jobs. If you can measure your worst jobs, then you can educate yourself to, I'm not going to do that again. Whatever I do, I'm not going to do that again. And if you get knocked down, you got to Chumbawamba, get back up again, but get back up better. There's no point getting up the same, oh man, life sucks, business sucks, everything sucks, that person sucks, everyone sucks but me, everyone's an idiot but me, right? You got to get up and you got to be like, okay, what did I learn from that? How can that limp now benefit me? How can I learn from what happened? But what are the parameters for me moving forward? So I won't do that again. So massive thing we see sometimes is people come to us And they more than likely, when you come to business coaching, sometimes you just come too late. Not saying it's too late, but sometimes you come a lot later than you should. It's like someone going to sort of counselling a lot later than they should. It's like, I wish I had this 10 years ago, 5 years ago, 15 years ago, because I've got myself in a bit of a pickle, and some of it's self-inflicted, and some of it's self-anointed, and some of it's self-appointed. So you see people and like, I just had this year and this, and it's like, there's a lot of things that are awesome about this business. We just need to dot the I's, cross the T's. We've got to get the big flathead screwdriver and tighten this up, because most of the stuff is awesome, but we've got to tighten up what we can tighten up. So super interesting to go through that. It's like, what are the parameters for you? You've got to establish parameters, right? You've got to be like, okay, sweet. What I need to do is I need to be moving forward with this wage, with this much business profit. I want these clients, I want this job, I want that. Like, what are the parameters for you? And if you can establish some goals, if you can establish some vision, if you can establish some resilience, if you can establish some smart work, if you can get some hard work and smart work combined, the Chinese combination plate, into your life, if you can get some effective quoting, some good quoting tools, shout out to the quote checker, if you can get all this stuff, if you can use your mistakes, if you can use your lack, if you can use what you're going through as lessons and now adopt it. Now you can apply what you've learned, and wisdom is essentially just applied knowledge. And now we can push forward and run the business that the trade gods ordained us to run back when we were mere babies, right? So it's like, why are you limping? What happened? Do you need to let it go? What do you need to learn from? Some things you need to walk around with forever. And I want to go there here for a sec, because it's like, I remember, and some things, I remember going through this court case, and it was literally like, the guy challenged, and our job notes at this stage were really, really bad. like there's bad, and then there's what our job notes were. So our job notes were so bad. And I remember going through, the guy's like, well, what did you guys do October 12th? And I'm like, I don't know. I'm not sure. And he's like, well, was it effective? And this guy smoked me. And looking back, to be honest, I used to think it was all sort of his fault. And looking back, it was partly self-inflicted. And I'm like, why don't we keep doing a good job note? So I was limping around with the pain of this sort of court case, of this like, why don't, like, I'm going to start doing job notes now. So we started doing job notes better than anyone. I'm like, I'm never going to get caught with this situation again. I'm limping from that, but now I'm running. I've worked that injury off, and I'm like, we've ironed that out. That process is now smooth. Now our job notes are like, you can't question our job notes. I can go back on anytime we were anywhere and be like, this is what we did on October 12, 2012. Like, I can go back and do it all now because we made that mistake. And I want to encourage you, if you've been knocked down, it might be time to get up again. If you've been knocked down, it might be time to work out what part did you play in that, and how can you get better. And sometimes like, oh, that guy made me do that job, oh, I had to do this job. You don't have to do anything. But what are the parameters for you going again? Set your goals, set your revenue targets, set your profit targets, set your staff targets, set your work week hours targets. And if you've been hit with a few shells, it's time to take those shells and eat them and learn from them. And whether you continue to carry that around with a limp, or whether you continue to implement that and run like Forrest Gump, run, Forrest, run, that's what you got to do. 50 Cent was right. You might be hit with a few shells, but don't walk with a limp. Get back up, get back on the horse. Have the best financial year ever. Peace.